Good morning, everybody. My name is Roy Kirchner, and this is Secrets for Success in 2025. Every single week, we come together to give you tips and tricks on having a better 2025 in gaining, becoming bigger, stronger, better over as the year progresses and grows. And there's a ton of stuff going on this year. Again, my name is Roy Kirchner. I'm a serial entrepreneur here in Tampa Bay. I was actually just named one of the 100 Titan 100s, so that was great. I've been on Fast 50 twice of the fastest growing companies in Tampa Bay, awarded by the Tampa Bay Business Journal. And my co-host is JR. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to go over the topic and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roy. As Roy had mentioned, my name is JR. My name is JR Espino. My company is Alloy Advisors, and I'm a business coach. And ultimately, what I do is I primarily work with small and medium businesses in assisting in two main ways: financial performance and leadership development, or we can call it company culture and employee engagement. The bottom line is I am someone who is going to help a business with their success, the business leaders as well as the employees. On top of that, I do have a lot of other relationships and affiliations with different organizations. And quite frankly, I'm able to do all these things because, not like Roy, I am not a serial entrepreneur. However, I am somebody who made that jump from corporate America into entrepreneurship, having spent over 27 years with a multi-billion dollar company and now taking those things to all of my knowledge gained to small and medium business. And that's why we do this particular live stream, is we want to be able to have an impact on those people who are entrepreneurs or leaders, whether you are an established entrepreneur leader. Maybe you're new to it, or you could even potentially be aspiring to be an entrepreneur leader. That is why I do what I do and why we do this every single week, Secrets for Success in 2025. And so for this week's topic, we're talking about 2025, Secrets for Success. This week's topic, I actually put it in the chat. And for those of you who are viewing right now, if you wouldn't mind also interacting with us in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. We would love to hear that. But then also, as you'll see in the chat, today's topic is the number one skill you need to dominate in 2025: adapt or be left behind. And so, Roy, I must ask you a question. What do you believe is the number one skill entrepreneurs and leaders need to dominate in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's adaptability.
Yeah.
Just kind of like we said, it's adapting to a new environment in which we are in and keep on going into. So, one of
Hmm.
the biggest things is artificial intelligence, right? The other is there's a big push for personal branding, but
Hmm.
personal branding is being authentic and real. I think that is the biggest thing. We're not looking for people that are copycats. We're looking to connect with people that are truly authentic and real, and who is adapting to the landscape, right, of
Hmm.
every single thing that is going on in the world, right?
Hmm.
So all of, businesses are changing. The way we're doing business is changing. The economy is changing. AI is defining new landscapes. It's adapting to this type of environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because adaptability is absolutely key. You know how there's that one saying, if doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And ultimately, what it boils down to is that we do need to adapt and change. And one of the things you just mentioned, well, not one, you had alluded to, was around some of the technological pieces. Now, here's the deal. A lot of times when people are thinking about innovation, they only think of it from the standpoint of technology. Innovation is even more than that. Innovation is thought. Innovation is adaptability. And I said this actually on our last episode last week, and that is, and I say it all the time. My son's high school wrestling coach said, the moment you're satisfied is the moment you begin to lose. And that is a take on a quote from Thomas Edison. that is show me a thoroughly satisfied man and I'll show you a failure. And adaptability is absolutely, absolutely critical to be able to advance because whether it is consumer behavior, whether it is technology, whether it is the employment market, we always have to adapt. And actually, I see from Johnny in the chat here, from his time in the military, the best leaders led by example. So that's absolutely key. And those leaders always had your back and best interests at heart. And so here's the thing to add on to what Johnny just shared in the chat, like as leaders, as entrepreneurs, you have to demonstrate that adaptability, right? So, Roy, can you share a time when adaptability or maybe even the lack thereof made or broke your business?
I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the biggest things, right, is change. And I think
Mm,
that's the biggest thing that people need to realize, especially in 2025, is you're going to need to adapt and you're going to need to change and you're going to
mhm.
need to grow, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, staying stagnant is not in any way, shape, or form the thing that you want to do, because you will absolutely 100% get left behind as the landscape is tremendously changing, right? Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, I think it's time, money, effort, right? Is adaptability, not adapting fast enough costs you money. Not
Hmm.
paying attention to every single thing that's going on, it costs you money. So, I can give you an instance of, we ship out, where we have an e-commerce part of the business. And if you're not constantly working to gain a better shipping rate, right? If you're not playing UPS and FedEx and USPS against themselves, right? And saying, hey, all my businesses with UPS these last 3 months, this last quarter, FedEx, can you do better? And you're constantly not looking at the number one expenditure within an e-commerce company. I mean, it can cost you an enormous amount of money. If you lay off the pulse, right, and you say, "Oh, well, let's just do it every 6 months, or let's do it every 9 months, or every year," I mean, you're
Hmm.
you're out of your mind, because it's the biggest expenditure. So I think it's that, and as you have growing pains, and as you're growing, and as things are happening, you have to remember that these things are vital to an organization to grow, right, and to save
Hmm.
time and save money and different things like that. So, I mean, that's one instance I can definitely give you, is skipping something like that, which of course, hindsight's 2020. You can look in the past and
Yeah.
see everything you did wrong. So it's great that, like you said, that you don't do any of those things in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's sometimes I'll say the the resistance for adaptability is resistance to change.
Yeah.
And, inherently, a lot of times, the human being isn't really wired to welcome change. I mean, there are a lot of us who say, yeah, we need change, we enjoy change, or what have you, but we're not really wired for it. And sometimes that pride gets in the way, right? And so,
And and I think,
while
JR, it's a mind shift set,
Mhm.
right? I mean, in 2025, we need to be looking at, what do I need to learn, right? And
Mhm.
who do I need to become? Like, who do I need to
Right.
become in the future?
Yeah. Well, and so that's the thing, right? That is somebody who is going to be adaptable, be flexible, is not going to let their pride get in the way. And so while I don't have a specific example of when adaptability or lack thereof impacted my business specifically, but I can tell you a story about a large, 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 very successful company that I got in their way. And you might have heard of this company, Kodak. Kodak, right? So for our
Yeah.
younger viewers who don't know what Kodak is, Kodak was a photography company, cameras and film and things like that. It was actually primarily film. And, back in the day, there were these little canisters that you load into a camera and then you'd take your shots, take your shots, take your shots. Kodak actually, they were probably first to market for at home printing of your photos as opposed to sending it off to the photo printer. But here's the deal. Kodak actually was the first to have digital technology and digital photos, but they were, I'll say, too prideful to adapt. And they said, oh, you know what? No, it's about the film. It's about printing. It's about the film. It's about printing. Nobody's going to want the digital technology. And goodness, how many people even have cameras anymore? Most of the time, people are taking pictures with their cell phone, right? And it's digital. And so, that lack of adaptability really crushed them. I mean, Kodak, like I said, I'm sitting here saying there are many young people who don't even know what Kodak is because they didn't adapt. I mean, another example is Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video, again, for those people who don't know, people used to go to a store and rent movies to be able to watch, as opposed to being able to watch it from your home. And so Blockbuster, and actually on Netflix, ironically, there's a documentary about the last Blockbuster. But
Yeah. And I mean,
the
the problem with them, right, is they should have hired a CEO or had a CEO that innovated
hmm
and turned into Netflix, right? And instead they got crushed
hmm
by like that type of, at that point in time, the cloud of, basically video, where
yeah,
that happened. And
yeah,
I mean, we're seeing that in so many sectors now. It's not even funny, just like telehealth. Like, who wants to wait? Who wants to go to a doctor, right? And let's say just for a simple cold, right? And to get medication for a cold. Who wants to sit in a doctor's office
yep,
and spend half their day or even an hour extra when you could just, pop it up and talk to a doctor right away on telehealth and get a prescription that's called in, and then you swing in, basically, and grab the prescription. I mean, it's those types of things. Time is money. Time is
hmm
money, and I think that's the number one key to growing and becoming more, is understanding that your time is so valuable, right? It's interesting because like my next door neighbor was talking about a venture that he's working on, which is, and it sounds crazy, but it's like laundry mats, right?
oh yeah,
And he goes, and I said, laundry mats, right? And he's like, yeah, man, they're great. And I said, well, what do you
hmm
mean? He's like, the new style laundromat. And I said, well, what's the new style laundromat? He said, it's laundry service. So if you
hmm
take a family of four, right, and you figure out how much time they spend like doing laundry, folding it, putting it away, and it's like 6 hours a week. I mean, that's
hmm
24 hours a month. And, a new laundromat service that comes and picks it up and drops it off for 350 bucks a month, right? You're getting 24 hours back of your time. Like,
right,
is there's the math, right? Like, and I never even thought of it, and I was like, wow, that's insane, right? Because it's all about how to get ahead and be able to do less, and that is not even, that what I gave you was not even using really technology. It's just thinking smarter and saying,
hmm
it's something that is beneath most people, which is laundry, right? Why do we
mm
do it? Why do we actually sit there and do it? Why are we not doing some type of service that are getting our lives back, right? Because you only live one life, right? And
hmm
can you imagine 24 hours, right, of doing laundry? I mean, it's insane.
yeah,
So it's those types of things that you gotta start looking at in your life, and start prioritizing, what really you need to do, right? And
hmm
then, like you said, it's a time when, wow, you said it more than anything, Jared. It's a time where it's kind of like we all have to go, and I say it, but we all have to kind of go back to school. We all have to continue to learn, right?
yeah.
We all have to continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, and that's it, right? It is that curiosity. That is what adaptability is all about, is making sure that we're curious to it. And it's cool what you said about your friend and the laundromats. Like that is innovation. Again, we're not innovation isn't just technology. It's around a mindset. So part of adaptability is around implementation. So we may have great ideas, but if we're not taking action on it, if we're not seizing the opportunity, we're not going to have the success that we desire because we're going to get left behind. And so I'll ask you, Roy, this. We've talked in the past about failures, and failures have basically helped in creating successes because we all have failed, right? And so, from your standpoint, what's more important when we're talking about implementation? Is it the speed or is it the strategy?
I definitely think it's the strategy over speed,
Mm,
right? It's really making sure that you put things in place. I mean, think of entrepreneurship and of growing a business or multiple businesses. I can tell you, that a lot of times 99% of people don't think about the most important thing of growing a business. And what is the most important thing? The most important thing is setting it up right at the beginning. The most important thing is setting up your accounting correctly, setting up your systems correctly, being able to, we're in an age of you can measure every single thing that you're doing, right?
yeah, yeah,
Creating the most important thing that is it that people don't even think about is like a marketing strategy, right? Because it doesn't matter, I say it all the time, like you could have the best restaurant, you could have the best chef in the world, but if you're not getting people in the door, you're
yeah.
not going to survive. So it's literally planning ahead, right? And making sure that you have trackability of every single thing that you're offering to a customer or client, and you're tracking it and you're paying attention to your numbers. So I think it's really setting up a foundation correctly. Or, if you're in business, we talked about this before on one of these, is it's data in. Bad data in is bad data out. Good data in is good data out. So if you have a business that you're not as clean as you should be, that now's the time that you should be spending tremendously cleaning everything within your organization, especially your data, especially your accounting, right? Because you
Hmm.
need to be able to use artificial intelligence and things like that to really get to the next level. And you cannot use those types of technology if you do not have clean data, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have clean books. So those types of things are gigantic. And that's why you say in the world, right? And anybody that is a true entrepreneur or serial entrepreneur, they're gonna tell you they've failed many times. All it takes is one to win, right? But you fail many times because you're learning these lessons along the way,
Hmm.
and you're trying to always connect with people to learn and grow. But sometimes, right, it's you're still making mistakes, right? And
Hmm.
what the mistakes sometimes are that people don't realize is sometimes they're out of your control. Sometimes they have to do with the environment and the landscape in which our world or our economy is in, just
Hmm.
like we had this year, and we're dealing with tariffs, right? Can you imagine that you're a husband and wife, right? And you had just created a brand new company that you're importing socks, like it's a brand new sock line, right? And you have the entire foundation built, and your inventory is on the way from China, and all of a sudden, this massive tariff gets put out, right?
Yeah.
And then that stuff actually lands and you own it for more than you were going to sell it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, those are the landscapes in which people don't realize that can happen in today's environment, right?
Yeah.
And that is out of your control, but you have to deal with those types of issues, right?
Hmm.
And you have to deal with, the other day, I was sitting with somebody that their business got destroyed from the hurricane that we had last
Hmm.
year. And they were like, oh my gosh, we're going into hurricane season. Like we're getting ready to go. We just lost in Pinellas County here in Tampa. Pinellas County is a county in Tampa for those that are not in the area. I think we lost 12,000 houses the first round of hurricanes last year.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, so there's so many things that sometimes have an effect, right? So it's really pulling together, having coaches, having consultants, having mentors, having people that have been through things, right? That can help guide you through. And that's the strange thing is like you said, some entrepreneurs, man, they just start out and they don't think that the most boring things are the most valuable things. Your books,
Right.
right? Your money,
Right.
your mark. all these things that are not the fun side, right? And even
Right.
sometimes as a serial entrepreneur, you get caught up in fun sides of the business, but the most important things are the structure, because as you grow, you need to replicate yourself to be truly successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as far as that question, what's more important, speed or strategy? You have to know where you're headed, right? You have to know where you're headed because how can you adapt if you don't even know where you're going? And so as a business coach, I also say I'm a business strategist. And of course, I want to talk about strategy and there's that saying, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. All of that. But again, you have to know where you're headed. Now, I also believe that speed is important. And so that should be a part of the strategy, when we're talking about implementation and things like that. But as you're going along this path, if you don't have that strategy, you don't know what changes need to be made. You don't know what you need to adapt to because then you're just sort of flying by the seat of your pants, right? You're just, walking blindly, all those different metaphors. So, viewers, I'm going to put it here in the chat. What changes should you be making right now as you think about you and your line of work, your business, your company, what you're leading, what have you? But what changes should you be making right now? And it may be like, oh gosh, maybe I need to have a plan, right? And so, Roy, from your standpoint, you've adapted. You've adapted to different things. You're adapting to a change right now. When it comes to what's happening in terms of the logistics of your business and your location, right? We have things that we can plan, we can plan, but then when there's a curveball, we have to do something about it. So, how do you, Roy, stay on track when it comes to adapting because you have to make that pivot and then, make sure that your team and your employees and your staff is just as flexible and adaptable as you?
Yeah, it's having, again, open communication when you say about your team, right?
Hmm.
But I mean, let's dig into this a little bit more. So it was crazy. I've been at my current location for my main, like I have a warehouse, I have office space, my main location here in Tampa Bay in Odessa. I've been here probably about 3 years now. And I have a landlord that I lease from, and we were getting ready to do a full remodel here.
Mm.
So I reached out to my landlord and connected with him and said, "Hey, are we good? Are we 100% good?" And believe it or not, he reached back out to me and said, "Yeah, you're good for years. Like,
Yeah.
everything's 100%." So I went and started doing some things to, basically get to the next level, build out, do all these types of things. We wanted it a certain way, so we decided as a team here we would do some of the build out, right? So I did it over
Yeah.
4th of July weekend. I did it the weekend after that, and we were continuing to do it. And believe it or not, my landlord had picked up the phone on Friday at like a 4 o'clock and said, Roy, I got to have a serious, serious conversation. It's not a good one. And he said, our largest competitor in the United States has gone out, and we're going to need you out of your location, unfortunately, by the end of the year, by the end of this year. And it is what it is, and not is what it is, but like, hey, we'll take care of you, and 1,000,000% is and will. But I still have to find a new location, and I still have to find how to continue to do business and move everything, which we're not a small entity, move everything, right? So you have to find
Yeah.
a new location, you have to negotiate a lease, you have to do all these things. And this came on Friday at 4 o'clock. And you want to talk about change. That's change, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you're all good, and then bam, your entire world kind of blows up. And that's everybody. See, the thing that people don't realize is there's something going on in everybody's life behind
Mm.
the scenes. There's
Hmm.
there's something happening, right? And nobody realizes that. So it's that's where I love, like, when you connect with people or you meet people, it's about being humble, and it's about, being authentic and real, and always trying to, help people, and because you never know what somebody's going through in a day. But
Mm-hmm.
that is an environment in which, I just signed a lease. We're going to end up moving, and it's a strategy. It's building an
Mm-hmm.
entirely new strategy to, adapt to the new world that we're in, which we're doing every single day. But now
Mm-hmm.
it's move everything, continue to do business, get everything done, all these types of things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of things that I want people to understand,
Right.
that we realize that, that's success in 2025 is, again, being able to adapt and change to an environment very quickly on anything that's going on in business or in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, earlier in the conversation, we were talking more along the lines of adapting around things we're anticipating, right? We're talking about adapting around market, consumers, things like that, technology, so on and so forth. But it's so important for us to also consider the things that we won't anticipate, right? And that's why
And I
adaptability is
think this
important.
year, I will say, in business, for any business owner or anybody thinking about it, getting into business, JR, right? What you just said, I think we've had so many changes. Like, this is the first time a president has come in to office in my lifetime, and it affects your business immediately. Like, things are changing, right? I mean, it affects people's lives immediately, like everything, just like a hurricane, right? One day everything's good, the next day, boom, all this like craziness is going on. So, like, natural disasters. We just had the largest earthquake in
Yeah.
the in forever, and tsunami warnings and all these things that are going on.
Mm,
So I think the number one key, right, is understanding and adapting to things that are adapting to both things that you
yeah.
want to, but the unexpected is always going to be there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so that's that actually is a really good segue into my next question for you. And so, um, a lot of our conversation so far has been around a mindset in staying ahead. And so, for you, how do you cultivate a mindset that's geared toward adaptability as you're navigating? And even how do you translate that for your employees?
Yeah. I think it's realizing a couple things, right? One is, taking a certain amount of time within a day to make sure that you have growth, right? And the growth that I'm talking about is make sure you're learning stuff new, right? So, like
Mm-hmm.
AI, make sure you're learning new. Make sure you're taking time for yourself, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that you don't burn yourself out, right? Make sure you have that little bit of peace, or do whatever you need to do. Me, it's the gym, right? Like, it allows me to get frustration out, allows me to do those types of things. And then, a lot of it, right, is constantly moving with the times that are going on.
Yeah.
I've used this analogy plenty of times, but you have to remember, in life, and I said in business a lot, but I say in life, every day that you wake up in the morning, just 100% believe that you're in a boxing ring with a professional
Yeah.
boxer, right?
Yeah.
And some days you're gonna dance around, like, you may be in good shape, right? And you may
Yeah.
dance around, he ain't even getting one lick. The next day, he realized he watched your pattern the first day. So the next day, now he's able to hit you, right? And get some good
Mm-hmm.
licks in. And then the next day, he's really able to knock you down. He didn't knock you out because you ain't dead, but you had a really bad day, right? And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you're watching his pattern, and you're learning, and you're evolving, and he's not getting you. That's life, right? So one day you could just go through, and you feel like, wow, nothing like, it was just a good day, right? Like, there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing that. Then
Yeah.
the next day, all this stuff comes happening, but it's not gigantic. But then the following day, it is gigantic, right?
Yeah.
That's the movement of life, and especially in business, right? As in entrepreneurship, that is the constant movement. That is
Yeah.
the 100% constant movement. And some people can handle that, and some people, they don't want that. I mean,
Yeah.
there is days, right? And I'm a serial entrepreneur, a successful serial entrepreneur. Those are days that I remember that I actually worked a normal job, right? and I got off work at 5. And the beautiful thing about working, this is the difference between entrepreneurship and working for somebody, right? At 5 o'clock, man, like I forgot about that business. Like it's my life, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
my time until the next day. I'm not the owner of that business. I'm not running that business. I'm not the one that's going to profit at the very end of the day.
Yeah.
It's that. And I could just do whatever I want. And then when
Yeah.
you own a business, that never turns off,
Yeah.
right? That never turns off. And
Yeah.
it's constant. It's really that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that actually ties really well to what Tiffany Anderson posted. And Tiffany, thank you for joining us. Adapting to mental shifts regarding how business is done. We have to look at it in terms of, again, that mindset piece, right? How do you shift your mentality when there is that change for the business, whether it's something that is planned or unplanned, right? How do you continue to keep your eye on that prize? And in some cases, it is a matter of how do you establish your resilience to make sure it happens. In other cases, it is about making sure you have the right people around you who are going to encourage you for that adaptability. In other cases, the staff that you're hiring, And so, um, we touched upon it a little bit, but I want to dive into this a little bit more. And based on your experience, and I'll share my experience in a moment, but how can leaders encourage adaptability within their teams or their company culture?
Yep. So I think I said this the other day, and I hadn't said it in a while, JR, and I'm going to use a little bit of an analogy here. I was being coached young in entrepreneurship, right? And it stuck with me, right? And the guy that was speaking to me, that was coaching me, he said, "Your job as an entrepreneur, business owner, CEO, your job is
Mm,
to figure out how to get your entire team, right? So some people call them teams, some people call employees. Your job is to figure out how to get them to work as hard as this scenario. And the scenario
mm,
is, JR, you're working for me and you're getting ready to go on a 2 week vacation, right? You're going on a 2 week vacation. Believe it or not, it actually shows like that day before you're leaving, you work so much harder than you have done in like the last 2 weeks. Like
right.
you're making
Yeah.
sure everything
Yep.
is organized, you're making sure all the T's and the I's are dotted. You're
Yep.
making sure so you're preparing, right, to depart for 2 weeks and you're double checking everything, but you've just put in so much more time, effort, consideration that day than you had
Hmm.
actually put in the last 2 weeks. And he
Hmm.
goes, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, your job is to figure out how to get them to do that every single day.
Yeah.
And to way to get people to do that again is take care of them, right? It's the culture within the business, understand who the person is, make sure that they're succeeding as much as they want to, make sure that
Yeah.
they're growing as much as they want to, give them the ability to grow, give them the ability to become more, give them the ability to know the vision of the company and where it's going and make sure that they meet that vision, right? That it excites them, like that they
Yeah.
want to do it because then you're going to get the most out of everybody. Because again, anything that you do in this entire world, right? Any job, you have to remember that if you don't feel like it's not a job, and I'm talking, this isn't every day, but you know the analogy. If
Yeah.
like, if I'm doing it every single day, I do it because I love what I do every single day, right? And I love the people that I surround myself with. I mean, you're working more than you're doing anything, right? So
Yep.
it's that type of thing that you're looking at is how do you do that? How do you get the most out of everybody? And I think we're gonna see more of that, right,
Mm,
too, in the way of AI, right?
mm,
Because people need to adapt, learn, change, and grow because again, as AI, they need to learn it because they don't want to be replaced by it,
Yeah.
right? They don't want to be replaced by it. So, we're going to be looking as a business owner, as a serial entrepreneur, we're going to be looking for those candidates that show those types of traits, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to need the other ones. We're just not
Right.
going to need them.
Yep.
So it's those types of things.
Yeah, and it's funny because um as you're talking about that, I would often say that employees, people, whoever in the workplace, we are the most productive the week before we leave for vacation.
Yeah,
We just are. And
yeah.
it's because of getting things in line, and to a certain degree, it is a little bit of a different way we manage our time because I forgot the exact theory, what it's actually called, but it is whatever time that you allot for the thing is going to take that much time. So let's say, Roy, both you and I are responsible for, I don't know, let's just say washing dishes. I don't know, whatever. And if I say, man, that's going to take me a half hour, it's going to take me a half hour. But if you say, man, it's going to take me 5 minutes, it's going to take you 5 minutes with the exact same amount of things. And so it is a matter of how we manage the time. And so we need to continue to figure out how to adapt to what the needs are and then replicate that through our teams. And so, one way that we can impact our team's ability to have that kind of adaptability mindset is to challenge them, right? It's to challenge them, it's to encourage them, it's to get them doing those things and allowing them to be productive. And by the way, well, that's delegation and whatnot. But then now you're strengthening skills too. So we've talked about mindset, we've talked about time management a little. We talked about team. We haven't really taken a deep dive into tech. We've scratched the surface of AI. So actually, real quick, viewers, in which areas do you need to adapt the most? Tech, team, time management, or mindset? And so let's talk about tech a little bit, Roy. We've mentioned AI a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And AI is a great productivity tool. And so, from your standpoint, when it comes to technology today with adaptability and adapting to those things, when it comes to the speed that the world is changing, to what degree do you believe that people should lean on AI or machine learning or bots and things like that in their effort to adapt?
Yeah, so my feeling is this, the big companies out there, right? Big companies, right? They're adapting so well and so fast to using automation, robotics, AI, that
Mm-hmm.
a we're in a time where they actually could completely wipe out smaller businesses,
Mm,
right? Because they're building massive infrastructures using this. So it's a time where I truly believe that most small businesses need to keep their eye on the pulse and need to master these tools. And the
mm-hmm.
number one mastering of the tools, right, is how does it grow my business? How does it bring in more revenue? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the number one key, is that, right? Is because everything else can get fixed if your revenue is there, right?
Yeah,
Everything else can get fixed. So
yeah,
you need to be leveraging AI. You need to be using the technology of tomorrow, today, to get ahead, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that is one thing that me and you talk about a lot, JR, like is sitting down with the business owner and walking them through how to use what we say the technology of tomorrow today to advance, get ahead, and start maximizing it to increase your revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of it, it could be, again, the landscape. Listen, the businesses that I have, believe it or not, I can honestly tell you that there's been times over years, right, where didn't, if I hadn't gained revenue, right, and had money in the bank to carry us through bad times,
Mm.
right, I wouldn't have the business. So it's the most important thing in somebody's business or in life to have safety nets, right? To
Yeah.
have safety nets. You never know when you're going to lose your job. You never know
Yeah.
when there's going to be a major problem, right? You don't, as a business and as a person, you don't want to not be financially secure, right?
Mm.
I'm not, you don't have to be majorly secure as a person, but as a business you do. Like there's
Yeah.
like you're responsible for people's lives. You're responsible for different things. So if there's anything is you're constantly looking at that. And I think the same thing happens with business owners, and that's why, it's so important for coaches and consultants is some of them get complacent as well. I mean, they've been in business for a certain amount of time, and they're like, man, we're
Hmm.
just running, but we're not. I mean, we're just yeah, like we're just pacing. Right, we're just
Yeah.
doing the same thing all the time, but we're not growing. Right now is the time where you have to lift up your head and say, I need to grow. Right, I need to evolve because all of a sudden they're going to start seeing these declines, and they're going to see these declines because they're not advancing in artificial intelligence, using it to maintain the business they have or get ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's vital, it's absolutely 100% vital that these things happen.
Yeah. 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 I mean, we have to. I mean, we have to continue to seek those resources out. We have to continue to, I said it earlier, remain curious. Gosh, actually, the company I used to work for that I spent nearly 3 decades with, we had hired a company, an external company around company culture and things like that. And one of the main pieces was to stay curious about those things and curious about leveraging the technologies. I want to go back really quickly here to the chat. And so Johnny had, responded when I asked what changes should you be making right now. He said, well, he's stumped. He can't really narrow it down to one thing. And that's the thing, though. At least at the very minimum is now you have that opportunity to think, okay, well, what is the mindset I need to have around that? And then fast forward, I asked the other question about what area you need to adapt the most. So actually, Johnny, it seems like as a part of the session, you started to think a little bit differently. And so using technology to help you with getting out the word on what you're doing with your organization, right? And then so it is a matter of, okay, who are you going to surround yourself with? That's an element that we talked about a little bit earlier, whether it's your colleagues, team members, the people in your hierarchy, coaches, whomever it may be. So I really appreciate that. From my observation, it looks like even just through this conversation, you're already starting to think a little bit differently. And Tiffany, for you, what area you need to adapt the most? Time management in terms of balancing the known and the ever changing. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think that ties even to what Roy you were talking about with the boxing match. I mean, Mike Tyson always said you have a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And so that punch in the face is part of that ever changing. And so it's like, the one thing that's constant is change. And so I would encourage people to ensure that they have strategies, plural, that they have what their main focus is, but then understand that there is a plan B. Now, they don't necessarily have to flesh it out completely, but have that plan B. And oh, by the way, leveraging technology can absolutely assist with that because then, gosh, ChatGPT or OpenAI, whatever sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning, like you can ask some questions to be able to help develop your plan B as a part of, those things that are ever changing that you're having to adapt to.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think the biggest thing, right, JR, is understanding that over the next few years, and I'm saying next few years, right? I'm not saying 5 years, 10 years, over the next few years, right? The elevation of intelligence is going to grow so much,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So are you adapting that elevation, right? Are you adapting? Are you showing up? Are you staying hungry, right? The real question is, are you evolving fast
Yeah.
enough, right, to stay in the game? Right, to
Yeah.
stay in the game, right? Like if you lost your job tomorrow, do you know enough about the new technology where you're going to sit in front of an owner, right, or a chief people officer, and you're going to know enough about how to get the company that you're about to go to work for? You're going to know enough about how to get them to the next level because that's they're going to want to hire you for that, right? So
Hmm.
are you staying that way? Are you evolving fast enough to stay in the game? Because
Yeah.
that's truly what it comes down to. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting complacent, comfortable in a job, because you don't know what that owner, right, of that job is doing and how he wants to evolve. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden he realizes, well, yeah, I can have this person leave. Then you don't have a job and you're trying to get a job. And if you haven't evolved enough or stayed in the game or stayed hungry or showed up and learned what you need to learn, right, to stay in the game, then it's a catch 22. So I think that's the biggest thing that our audience needs to understand is that, right? 100% that is this is a time that it's not about the business owner, right? It's about every single person in their life taking the time out to learn the new things that they're going to need to know.
Yeah, and it's funny because as you're using the terminology of stay in the game, in my mind, I started thinking about staying ahead of the curve because that's
Yeah.
part of it too, right? And so I'm going to post this into the chat here, viewers, how do you stay ahead of the curve? Because we have all these things coming our way. We're talking about adapting. We're talking about the known and the unknown, this, that, and the other thing. And Roy was talking about we have to stay in the game. We have to have those the people around us. We have to have the resources, the technology, all those things.
Well,
And oh,
and the
by the
biggest thing too, right, that you got to understand is I can meet somebody out networking, or I can meet somebody that I want to do business with.
yeah,
And now it's so unbelievable, right, that I can go to AI and I can
yeah,
type in just these words, just these three words, analyze Roy Kirchner.
yeah,
And then just put that in, analyze me, and watch it create and build who I am. So, like, if this is a hack for anybody, if you're out networking and you meet somebody and you really want to know about that person and connect to them,
yeah,
just turn your back to them, analyze, put their name in and press analyze.
yeah,
And boom, all of a sudden it tells you a ton of information about that person, right? And then
yeah,
you can better connect with that person and things like that. Or you can see if you have things in common with them that you could immediately bring up because again, connections matter. That is the biggest thing is if you're not branding yourself online, if you're not considering even a personal brand as like personal brands are going to matter tremendously no matter what,
yeah,
no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're working for a company, it doesn't matter if you're it definitely matters if you're like the face of the company, but definitely like as things evolve, right, like they're gonna want to see more of who you are.
yeah, yeah. And that is actually one of the things that people should consider in staying ahead of the curve, right? I mean, staying ahead of the curve, you can use the analogy of, like driving, but really it's the curve around like here's low performance, here's where everyone else is, and here's high performance and that sort of bell curve and staying ahead of that curve. Yeah, leveraging those types of things for the visibility. I just had a conversation the other day with a couple of friends. There's one individual, she and her husband own a successful business, and then she's also wanting to get into another space with where there's a level of confidentiality associated with it. And then the other person in the conversation is somebody who's actually in like social media marketing and that sort of thing. And we were talking about how consumers want to know the person. Consumers want to know who they're doing business with. I mean, in terms of that brand. And we need to continue to have that visibility for like staying ahead of the curve. Because, let's say, Roy, you're a serial entrepreneur. guess what? A year from now, you might add another thing to your line of businesses, and then people will want to do business with you because they know you. But if it's just a random thing, random product, random service without the identity of the person behind it, then they may not be so keen to consume. And so, yeah, we need to have that. We need to have. I don't even know how I got even on top to that, but we need to stay ahead of the curve in that way where we are staying visible and having that credibility. I mean, gosh, networking is all about making sure people know, like, and trust you. And so staying ahead in that way. Now, Johnny, you had commented, whatever AI tells you about me is slander. It should be taken with a grain of salt. Okay. Sorry, I just realized that was a facetious comment. David, a little late to the game, but definitely need to work on time management, trying to learn a whole new world while growing personally and professionally at the same time. Yeah, and I know David personally, as I do most of our viewers here today, but the transition from veteran life to civilian life, also similar with Johnny and his comments as well. Tiffany, you just commented staying ahead of the curve by doing things like this session. Thank you. Always be learning, 100%. Always be engaged in growth opportunities, read, connect, engage, research. Yes. Lifelong learning is huge. We need to be a sponge, right? Because I think I've said this in the past that if this is who we are, this is the lens that we look through, these are the results we're going to have. If we don't ever do anything to expand our network, to have other people have different lenses of looking, if we don't ever read more books to expand our lens of what we're looking at, we're always going to be here. But if we expand our network with different people, if we start to leverage technology a little bit different, if we read books, if we learn, if we take classes, if we attend sessions like these, then we have a different lens to look through for a different level of success in order
Yeah.
to stay ahead of the
Well,
curve.
yeah, and I mean one of the biggest things I can tell you, right, in gaining time management and becoming more successful, and it happened a long time ago for me, but I realized getting up early, yeah, but now some people say I'm a little obsessive. I get up at 4:30 in the morning, but getting up early or even adding another hour to your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that people have to realize is that if you get up before anybody else an hour
Mm-hmm.
earlier and nobody's bothering you, how much can you really get done, right? You can get a
Mm-hmm.
lot done, right?
Yeah.
Like in again, I'm a morning person. That's when I focus in tremendously more, but I can tell you my advancements, I wouldn't have advanced the way I did without growing that within myself, right? Getting
Yep.
up earlier, taking the time out and learning. And that was my time to learn. Like I use that. I mean, I think, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm sure JR, you could put it in. What is it if you got up an hour earlier every single day and spent that time learning? How much does that equal in a year? I mean, you want to talk about adding to your day and correcting time management? That's one of the best ways.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right off the bat, even if you were just to say that it's every week, right? That's an additional 52 hours, right? Imagine that, what you're able to do with an additional 52 hours and like what kind of results you would get. And so, yeah, we have to be mindful of our activity. We have to implement, and we have to quote do it, right? We have to do it. And Tiffany commented here too, we can't let AI do all of the thinking for us. We can use AI to engage in those things. I commented too. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
AI is not the thing that's going to, take over our brain. Well, we shouldn't let it, right? Because what's unique about us is that we're unique and we are able to then flex and adapt to these things. And we leverage the technologies to be able to help inform us as the human being, empowering the thing to inform us in the actions that we're going to take and how we're going to adapt, right? Because quite frankly, too, AI, it's open source and the information that it's grabbing, it may not be suitable for everything that you have going on in terms of your own unique thought and processes. So,
And AI is evolving at a
mhm,
very fast rate, but it's still evolving. So
yeah,
yes, you always have to have the human element within it as it evolves as well. And that's the thing is it's going to make a absolute stronger connection as AI evolves and as we use, right? This is
hmm,
the thing that people have to remember. As AI evolves, right? And technology evolves and robotics evolve, right? There's less interaction within a human being, right?
hmm,
Which we're actually going to earn for more
hmm,
human to human contact, right? Which is going to push more towards personal branding, social capital, connection of real authentic people. So it's
yeah,
actually that's why you see that growing because the more we evolve where we have less communication, the more people are going to earn for that communication, but they're going to earn for it in a way of wanting to spend their time 100% with a real, true person that they can connect with, right? That's
yeah.
authentic and real.
Yeah, and it's actually just to wrap up that thought, Brian posted here, I think the biggest secret to success is putting in the work. Most are looking for a silver bullet to solve, but each instance is unique and only you can solve to fit your situation. And yes, agreed, 100% that it is about the individual. And again, it is putting in the work. You all who have joined us, thank you because you're putting in work in trying to evolve yourself, to be able to adapt, to be able to, grow, learn, be that sponge. And so, as we start to wrap up here, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to interact with us. If you're watching the recording, type into the chat because we do look at those and DM us directly. If there are certain topics that are relevant for you, let us know those things too, and then we can, continue to serve you all as our viewers. So, Roy, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we do this every single week to, again, achieve better success in 2025. It's sharing secrets to success. And the biggest thing you have to remember, I mean, if you're stuck in business or in life and you're looking to get there and you don't know how, I mean, that's when you truly connect with us, right? Because I mean, that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah,
We're always evolving and growing to the next level. I'm always constantly getting better myself, and sometimes you just need that coach or consultant to help you do that.
yeah.
But listen, have an absolute wonderful week. We look forward to seeing you next week. All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.